Okay, so today I'm gonna be giving you guys my full financial picture. I'm gonna be going over everything that I've saved, invested, and what my total debt is at 29 years old. So the last time we caught up, I was actually feeling pretty good about where I was at, and that was less than a year ago. Well, I can tell you that as time has gone on and as I've continued to follow through on my overall financial strategy, my confidence has definitely gone up in terms of what I'm doing, but I've also had to come to terms with the reality of timelines. So in general, as someone who started off their 20s being super determined to make good financial decisions, I've more or less had an idea of where I should be at based on my age. And honestly, I'm not saying that you should be somewhere specific based on your age, but naturally as humans, we do love to compare ourselves. And you know, I'll admit it, I'm no different, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. Anyways, what I mean by this is that when I finished school and I found myself in quite a bit of debt, I wanted to make sure that I paid it off as quickly as possible. And I did. When I found myself in a job that wasn't giving me what I wanted, whether it was income or even future growth potential, I worked hard to make sure that I got out of that situation as soon as possible. And I did. Basically, I've always had some sort of plan or thought on what I should be doing, but the reality of just life is that that sort of thinking sometimes doesn't actually factor in the fact that we have no control over time, especially when it comes to some of our bigger goals. Now, I'm sure that some of you are listening to this and can relate, but even if you can't, what I really want to focus on in today's video is kind of in two parts. First, yes, I am going to share all the numbers as we normally would, so check mark there. But I also want to share with you guys my more detailed thoughts on how things are going and how things have been along the way. Anyways, let's get into it and start from the beginning. So starting with investing, my investing journey has been really interesting so far, mainly because so much has changed in what I knew to be true. It's funny because as someone who went to business school, a lot of my thoughts, especially when it came to investing, just like anyone else, were shaped by what I saw and what I was involved in. For example, if I think back to that time, trading really is what a lot of people talked about. And I even remember myself opening up an Investopedia account so I could do some paper trades. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically fake trading stocks without using any of your own real money and seeing how you do. I also remember seeing on campus a bunch of different posters of different trading competitions where we'd use this software, and then over the course over a few days, you'd then see how everyone did. Basically, our minds, even if we don't know it, in the present are being shaped by what will eventually be our foundational knowledge on a specific topic in the future. Now, I started investing back in 2021, and even though at that point I knew that I wanted to invest passively for the long term, there was still a part of me that still felt like there was some sort of industry secret that if only you had your hands on it, you could somehow make life-changing amounts of money. In fact, I was talking to one of my friends recently who, as far as I knew, has had no interest in personal finance at all, which is kind of funny because I talk about money and personal finance literally all the time, but that's a story for another day. But I was talking to him recently when he told me that he was thinking of starting a side hustle, and the side hustle that he was thinking of starting was gonna be trading stocks. His thoughts were, how hard could it be? Other people do it. What's funny is that in my opinion, this way of thinking is what urges people to change up their long-term investment strategy and lean more towards gambling with their money through stock picking, because how hard can it be? The reality is that a positive, life-changing money event in the short term is just as likely to happen as a negative, life-changing money event in the short term, especially when you're doing something that people see as just being normal or, just moderately risky. I feel like when I'm talking to friends or just people that I randomly meet, there's often two camps that people fall into, right? A lot of the times you'll find people who are either too scared to talk about investing because they're not confident in what they know, or there's the other side where you meet people who are super eager and want to tell you everything about all the stocks and all the crypto that they own. The reality is that you just don't know what you don't know until you one day know it, if that makes sense. If I look at my own personal journey, by the time I had my first $20,000 invested, yes, it felt great to have contributed that much money into my investments, but I hadn't really felt or seen the power of investment growth just yet. I was maybe up a couple $100s, which was cool, but most other people, it didn't really move me. So even though I was passively investing for the long term, I still hadn't fully registered what that really meant. Now, as I continued to contribute more and more money to where I had $50,000 invested, $70,000 invested, to now being over $100,000 invested, I'm now starting to finally see some substantial growth. And it's almost like the distance between your contributions and the growth of your investments is just becoming basically just greater and greater. Anyways, right now I'm in a place where I've made contributions to all of my registered investment accounts. So that's the TFSA, the FHSA, and the RRSP. What's cool is that last year I fully maxed out my TFSA and my FHSA for the very first time. So right now I'm basically in a position where I'm more or less just maintaining these accounts. So what that means is that every January, starting with this January, every time I gain more contribution room, which happens at the beginning of each and every year, for the most part with these accounts, I'll be able to remax them out really quickly and get my money working for me as quickly as possible as well. As of right now, my TFSA is fully maxed out again for 2025, which means that I've contributed a total of $82,000. I'm also currently working on remaxing at my FHSA, which should be fully remaxed out by, let's say, the end of April or early May, which would mean that I would have contributed a total of $16,000. As of right now, I've contributed a total of $9,000 to the account. And then when it comes to my RRSP, that account currently has around $10,000 in it. And honestly, I think only time is really gonna tell at which point I'll be able to fully max out that account. That means that the total amount of money that I've contributed to my investments is $101,000. Now, when it comes to savings, this one's also a bit of an interesting one because up until basically the middle of last year, I had almost $20,000 in savings as well as a $10,000 emergency fund. For me, apart from my emergency fund, I try to have as little of an amount in liquid cash as possible, mainly because it doesn't really serve me to have that money just sit there, and it also could otherwise be growing in the market. Now, I recently shared that I actually made the decision to move all my $20,000 in savings into my investment account, which basically meant that I had no more cash savings, apart from my emergency fund, that is. After doing this, I can't really say that I felt anything negative really, especially given everything that I've already said up until this point, but it really did get me thinking about goals, especially goals that require you to have cash on hand and how that would play out for me moving forward. So we talk a lot about investing for the future, typically retirement. One, because it's important, and two, because gone are the days where people have guaranteed pension plans. If you're not a teacher, a nurse, a government employee, a police officer, etc., 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 and you're someone who's in those fields and also not planning to stay in your job or career long term and under that same pension plan long term, then you need to know that it's on you to make sure that you're set up financially for a time where you either can't work or for a time where you can choose to not work anymore. By the way, and as a side note, all of those jobs and careers that I just named should still be putting money away on top of their work pension plans. FYI. Anyways, when it comes to savings, if all the money that you're putting away is just going towards your investments, how are you gonna save up to buy a house, to buy a car, or for a wedding, pretty much any of your other bigger life goals? Well, this is where my conversation on timelines comes in. Basically, for the regular person, you can save up for pretty much all of these things, but you need to have a plan and you need to understand that you likely, keyword being likely, won't be able to do it all at the same time on a regular salary. Now, luckily, me and Steph have actually front-loaded our investments, which means that we've prioritized investing now, because who knows, in the future, there might come a time where me and Steph just aren't able or just aren't investing as much as we have in the past. What I will say is that we do actually foresee a time where you guys will get to see us transition our money more towards liquid cash or liquid savings so that we can actually meet some of our other larger goals. Like, for example, when it comes to purchasing a house, we're hoping to keep our TFSAs intact, but that's definitely a conversation for another time that, we can have later. Now, in terms of my bank accounts, my current goal this year is to maintain $10,000 in my emergency fund, so in a high interest savings account. Now, I actually had to use some of these funds recently because I was short a few $1,000s for a family trip that me and Steph went on, but I'm actually really glad that I spent the extra money because this trip was really, really fun and it was really great to actually just make memories with my family. Now, with that being said, I know that this trip wasn't a typical emergency, but I know that I will never go into debt when I know that I have cash on hand in the bank. Now, I wouldn't typically use this money for, this type of, I guess, expense that comes up. But, the money was there and it was a few $1,000s that I planned to top back up. Now, in terms of topping it back up, I wanted to make sure that I did that as soon as possible, just in case of an actual rainy day. So making sure that my emergency fund actually was full. Now, I was able to do that as of this month. I basically just took a little bit of money from our year-end bonus and allocated that towards this account. So right now, if you were to look at my bank accounts, you would notice that I keep roughly $1,600 in my Simply Financial no-fee checking account. That way there's enough money in there to cover any recurring bills. Then in my Wealthsimple cash account, and by the way, I sometimes switch out these accounts just depending on which high interest savings account has the current best or highest rate, I have my $10,000 emergency fund. Now that's so that the money is still readily available and still earning a little bit of interest instead of wasting away in a regular traditional account. That means that the total amount that I've contributed to my savings is sitting just above $11,000. I feel like now that we've gone through the part where I'm actually up in life financially, now let's talk about the debt side of things. So we've talked a lot in prior videos about my student loans and just how crazy it was mentally for me to pay them off. I mean, obviously we all put on a smile, especially when we're talking to other people, but when I was going through that journey, I wanted to make sure that I was being as open and as honest and as candid as possible, just in case, you guys were going through the same thing and you had debt as well. Now, I know that a lot of you have different types of debt, whether it be consumer debt, mortgage debt, payday loans. I really hope not that one, but if you do, please let us know down in the comments below or shoot us an email. But for me, when I finished school, I finished with a total of $50,000 in student loan debt. So 45 or so of that came from government loans, and then 5,000 of it came from a student line of credit. Now, when I tell you that paying this off as quickly as I did was tough, it was tough, especially when you consider the fact that I was on a very junior starting salary at the time. To give you guys some context, I was making roughly $1,400 biweekly or $2,800 a month, and I was pushing $1,300 of that towards my debt each and every single month. If you're interested in reading more about my journey, we actually did a newsletter where we talked all about basically everything from my thoughts and all of it during that process that you can actually check out here. So what's interesting now is that I've been debt-free for almost 4 years, and what I can tell you as of right now is that I probably won't have any debt again until I have a mortgage on a property. Now, I don't know when that'll be because we're not actively looking into real estate right now, but I could see a world where an opportunity presents itself and we jump on it. So yeah, make sure you stay tuned. Anyways, as it stands right now, I currently have $0 in debt, but this could change, so we'll revisit this over the course of the next couple years, I guess. Now, if we take a look back and compare my journey year over year, at age 28, when I finally graduated university, I had $0 invested, $0 saved, and $50,000 in student loan debt. At age 25, when I finished paying off my debt, I again had $0 invested, about $320 in savings, somewhere around there, and $0 in debt. At age 28, so what I shared in last year's video, I had about $40,000 invested, somewhere around there, $30,000 saved, also somewhere around there, and $0 in debt. Now at age 29, which is right now, and 4 years after paying off my student loan debt, and 3.5 years into starting my self-employed journey, I have just over $101,000 invested. So this is the money that I've contributed and not the actual value of my accounts. I have just about $11,000 in savings and $0 in debt. Real quick, if you want to know the value of my investments, make sure you check out last week's video. Now, I've had almost a $175,000 swing in my net worth over the last 7 years, and that's also taking in the fact that I've built a business that I'm still trying to grow. I'm still trying to grow my own knowledge and also myself as a person as well. Right now, I'm just really proud of myself and what I've been able to accomplish in a really short period of time, which, like I've said in past videos or I've said before, is really tough to take in when you're young, but time flies. Like, I'm sure if you watched our earliest videos that are live on the channel, you'd see the growth or you'd see how much has changed. But I really feel like it's only only up until you've actually poked your head out that you realize what that change actually is. Right now, I feel like from a timeline perspective, I feel like a lot of us just want it all really, really quickly, especially in the social media age where you're constantly seeing people who seem as if they're in the same life stage as you be that much further ahead. It just makes it that much tougher for us mentally, but you know, at the end of the day, we're all pretty much on our own timelines. And it's, even though it's hard to think about that, it really is true. Like, for example, that same person that you might be looking at and comparing yourself to, they're probably going through the exact same emotions because they're comparing their journey to someone else's. Listen, one of our favorite sayings is that you can have anything, but not everything, especially in the short term. We just all need to give ourselves grace and not expect the world after just previously planting a seed maybe a few days, a few weeks, months, or even just a few years ago, right? Everything good takes the right habits, but it also takes, more importantly, time. With that being said, we hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and if you have any thoughts or comments, make sure you let us know down in the comment box below. And yeah, we'll see you next week with another video.